A brief history of the United States. The United States of America has been referred to as a young nation, owing to its founding in 1776, when the Declaration of Independence was issued. In reality, the journey that the United States has been on began before 1776. Native Americans were the first to inhabit this fertile land. They are thought to have crossed from the Eurasian continent via what is now Alaska and Canada. The chronological timeline of the United States is simple to follow. Its history is often traced back to Leif Ericson, who is thought to have visited this land around the year 1000. The Pilgrims in the 16th century were later followed by other European nations such as Spain, Portugal, and Britain after Christopher Columbus in 1492. As time passes, the role of this young nation becomes clear in every part of the world. There is no part of the world that has not been influenced by the United States of America. The story of the United States begins with the 13 colonies, which had 2.5 million people by the late 18th century. The Declaration of Independence sparked the American Revolution in 1776 in its quest for independence. Between the Revolutionary War against Britain and the American Civil War in 1861, the young nation faced a slew of political and social storms, in addition to significant progress. Slavery of Africans was already a problem back then, which may have contributed to the formation of the Confederate States of America, which led to the Civil War. As the war broke out, lines were drawn on the sands of America. The Civil War was followed by the Reconstruction era, in which a change in the overall atmosphere brought about growth-related change. Slavery was abolished, states that had seceded from the Union were readmitted, and the national government became stronger. All 48 contiguous states were admitted in 1912, with Alaska and Hawaii joining later in the century. Progressives introduced a new tone between the 1890s and the 1920s. People were sick and tired of corruption, waste, and old-school politics. Women's suffrage was advanced during the movement, and the prohibition of alcohol was added to the Constitution. Under Woodrow Wilson, the United States maintained its neutrality when World War I broke out in 1914. Wilson attempted to keep the United States out of the war, but in 1917 he relented and declared war on Germany. The 1929 Wall Street crash came after a decade of prosperous living. The years that followed marked the beginning of a 10-year global Great Depression. In what was known as the New Deal, Franklin Delano Roosevelt and other politicians provided relief to the people. This resulted in a variety of programs, including relief, recovery, and reform. Unfortunately, all of this did was reshape the political landscape that gave rise to the Democratic Party, large political machines in major cities, so-called intellectuals, and the White South. Sunday, December 8, 1941, a day that will go down in history. FDR's words signaled the United States' entry into the Second World War in less than 25 years. On that date, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor resulted in the first use of the atomic bomb. This also marked the Allied forces' defeat of Nazi Germany. The Cold War arose immediately following World War II. Despite a brief period of respite for the U.S. in the years following World War II, by 1950, the U.S. was embroiled in the Korean War, and by 1959, the U.S. was completely involved in the Vietnam War. Both wars have been described as proxy wars, in which a third party is used to fight a conflict. The Cold War ended in 1991, but a new kind of war, the War on Terror, erupted in the decades that followed. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 marked the end of the Cold War, leading to the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union. Ronald Reagan paved the way in 1987 with a speech in which he challenged Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet leader at the time. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. When Ronald Reagan stepped down after 2 terms, George Herbert Walker Bush was elected president after serving as Reagan's vice president. The Soviet Union disintegrated in 1991, leaving the United States as the world's sole remaining superpower. It made them the sole monitor of the rest of the world's affairs. The United States also became involved in what was known as the Persian Gulf War in 1990. The United Nations authorized a coalition of 34 nations to wage war against then Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. The U.S. led the coalition forces in their fight against Iraqi forces in their invasion and attempt to annex Kuwait, an Arab state. Many have dubbed the U.S.-led military response Operation Desert Storm, while others have dubbed it the mother of all battles. During the 1992 presidential elections, William Bill Jefferson Clinton defeated George H.W. Bush. The Clinton administration experienced economic and political ups and downs. This period also witnessed the arrival of the digital revolution, with the dot-com era created by the introduction of the Internet providing economic opportunities in the United States. When Bill Clinton was impeached by the House of Representatives for lying about a sexual relationship he had with an intern, the Clinton administration was rocked. He was charged with high crimes and misdemeanors. In November of 2000, George Walker Bush, son of George H.W. Bush, narrowly defeated Democratic candidate Al Gore by the narrowest of margins, ushering in the 21st century. The results were subjected to numerous legal challenges before the United States Supreme Court intervened. When the United States Supreme Court decided to halt the recount, Bush was ahead. George W. Bush and the people of the United States faced a new war in his first year in office, just months after he took the oath of office. The American people were rudely awakened on September 11, 2001, when two hijacked airliners were flown into the two World Trade Center towers in New York City. Al-Qaeda terrorists piloted the planes. Members of the same terrorist group seized two other planes. One was flown into the Pentagon in the Arlington, Virginia countryside, and the fourth plane crashed in the fields of rural Pennsylvania, near the city of Shanksville. The fourth plane was thought to be on its way to the White House or the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. On September 11, 2001, over 3,000 people were killed. George W. Bush declared a war on terror. The United States and its NATO allies then invaded Afghanistan, which was thought to be ruled by the Taliban and a safe haven for Al-Qaeda members and its leader, Osama bin Laden. The United States launched another invasion in the Middle East, this time against a familiar foe in Saddam Hussein, dubbed the invasion of Iraq. Hussein was thought to have weapons of mass destruction. During the early days of the Iraq War, the U.S. encountered opposition not only from those loyal to Hussein, but also from combatants from anti-American factions from the Middle East. Some Americans opposed the Iraq War. This resulted in a different type of anti-war sentiment, though it is similar to that seen during the Vietnam War. Despite being re-elected in 2004, Bush became unpopular as a result of the Iraq invasion. By 2007, the United States and many parts of Europe were experiencing a recession not seen since the early 1930s. Even to this day, every aspect of the American economy has been impacted. Various industries were affected, including the housing market and the automotive industry, to name a few. There was also a crisis of rising unemployment and rising oil prices, all of which contributed to a devastating financial crisis that Americans had not seen since the Great Depression. This financial crisis ushered in the 2008 presidential elections, which saw Barack Hussein Obama elected as the 44th President of the United States. After taking office, Obama announced a $787 billion economic stimulus package in the hopes of stimulating the economy. This included bailout assistance for General Motors and Chrysler, with the goal of preventing the automotive industry from collapsing completely. Then in 2016, we saw the country go against Hillary Clinton and elect Donald Trump as the president. In 2020, after claiming election fraud by Trump, Joe Biden was elected and took office. The story of the United States is still being written, and the rest of the world is watching with bated breath. Thanks for watching, and be sure to support this channel.